This is the final of 3 conversations that I've been having regarding the voice, all with different Indigenous activists and thinkers adopting different positions. The first conversation was with Celeste Little. Celeste had an undecided position. The second conversation was a progressive no position with Kieran Stewart Asherton, and this is the final, and it's with Tarneen Onus Browne on a yes position. I really enjoyed this chat, and I'm so grateful to Tarneen for having it with me. So enjoy, and I hope it gives you the kind of direction that all of these conversations have certainly helped give me. Today I'm speaking to a Gunditjmara, Bindal, Yorta and Torres Strait Islander activist and a veteran organiser with Warriors of the Aboriginal Resistance. I'm really excited to have Tarneen Onus Browne on for this final of 3 chats I've been doing. Tarneen, thanks so much for agreeing to chat.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to yarn with you.
Every Indigenous person I know with some sort of a public platform is just absolutely constantly being asked to pump out their opinion time after time on the referendum, just ad nauseum, day to day. So I know that's a real energy drain, and it's a shit time generally. So I really do, I appreciate it, and hopefully we can make this as not painful as possible. First of all, we'll start things simply. Tarneen, in the upcoming referendum on constitutional recognition for Indigenous people and an advisory body known as a voice to Parliament, how will you be voting, and how do you recommend that everyone else votes, in brief?
I have already voted yes, or written yes, and I do think that people should write yes, and there's lots of, it's a somber time for blackfellas at the moment because of the amount of racism, and I do want to send a message to, this country and government when people do write yes on the ballot papers that people do care about blackfellas, because I know that this vote isn't about, what the representative body will look like, or it's about blackfellas at the end of the day. It's about how people feel about us. And that's the worrying thing for me, that what does that mean if it is a no? Because we know that Sky News started up their 24-hour voice channel, and the amount of work that's been done on the other side, especially in the Racist No campaign, that they're just sending messages to millions of Australians that we don't deserve to have representation, and that we don't deserve to have power, even over something that is as conservative as a representative body. It is a conservative ask, and that's me being completely honest. I do worry about the blackfellas after this, if it is a no, and what it will mean for treaty processes around the country as well.
I think in my preceding 2 conversations I had discussed with people that, really all that's substantially been put on the table is, as you say, a rather conservative and pretty toothless, advisory body. But for all that we could say that, it really has become, because of the ineptitude of, the ineptitude of the question, the way it's been framed, the very nature of this country, of what a referendum is, the plebiscite that came before it, which I'm sure we'll get to, because of all those things, like it or lump it, it really has fundamentally become a, where do you stand on valuing the livelihood of Indigenous people, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. My dad lives in Bundaberg, and he was out for coffee, and they were talking about the referendum with my 70-year-old uncle, and this man came up and just said, "Oh, I don't care, yous have done nothing for us," and they were having a screaming match, and in the cafe, and my uncle's got a walking stick, and he nearly flogged this racist guy. And, this is what it's brought up. It's brought up like our capability, like whether we matter or not, our strength, and our contribution as well, like to our community. And, you know, we've done, like, blackfellas are always looking after each other, and we saw that with, you know, Foley and others, like, creating legal services and health services and all this work that community organisations have done as well. Like, it's, people just think that, you know, we're not doing nothing, but we're strong, we're proud, we've been out there protesting. We've done, like, all of the things, you know.
With respect to, you know, a yes vote, can I ask, did you start with that conclusion, or did you kind of like come over from a no to a yes? You know, did you change positions over time?
Yeah, I've changed up and down, and, like, yeah, I've just been back and forth, from yes to no kind of all year. And last week I was like, Tarneen, like, you just have to do it. Like, you just have to write it. And I just said to my partner, like, I was so, I just, like, finished a really hectic day at work, and it took me like 2 hours to get home, and I was, like, so tired, and I received the the ballot in the paper, and I just, like, burst into tears. I was, like, so fucking angry, and I was just like, I hate this country. I'm so pissed off, like, that they've done this to us, da-da-da, and so I'm, like, just crying in the bedroom, and I was just like, ugh. It's like, I'm just going to write yes in this now, because otherwise, like, I hate this, but I'm just going to do it. And because I've been back and forth all year about whether to do it. Like, even after I was like, I'm all in now, I just, like, kept going back, and yes and no. And yeah, it's been a hard one. I guess, like, the first time I ever thought I was going to vote yes was, like, in the new year, when I was speaking to Sally Rugg. She said, oh, you know, like, it's cooked that they're doing this, but they're going to, like, make it into something that it's not, and they're going to, like, be racist and do all these things. And then over the year, you know, speaking with Maruki and Millie Telford and Larissa Baldwin, and even just, like, speaking to Crystal, and, like, me and Crystal talking, just, like, you know, me talking to her about my position in particular, and moving back and forth all the time. So, yeah, I guess I've been, really just back and forth all year. I guess, like, the one thing that I've admired about Celeste is, like, undecided, and, like, it's...
I think there's been a strategic benefit that's been conferred to someone like Celeste by, you know, saying publicly I'm undecided confers to Celeste an ability to talk about a whole range of problems without being, you know, I mean, Celeste has said, you know, I've watched Celeste's pieces, which are all of a very plainly undecided, you know, they literally say it, all of them. And, you know, I see people sharing them, you know, sort of, you know, yes or no campaign people who clearly haven't read the article. It's crikey, it's paywall. They share it and they go, yes, look, vote yes, vote no, and that kind of thing. They're like, oh, here's an Aboriginal woman who I think is saying what I want them to say. They haven't read the thing. They like the look of the title of the article. It's just astounding, isn't it? So reductive. But, you know, that's the kind of reductive, childish discourse, you know, the juvenile and harmful discourse that you kind of expect. But, mate, you know, what I love about you, and particularly, you know, for the purposes of this discussion, well, you're not a fucking lib, for one. You know, you're not like a centre left, centrist, bloody mainstream. You know, that's not your politics. No. I mean, well, hang on. Obviously, you know, I admire your activism from, you know, I've been in Melbourne for many years watching your organising alongside war, and, you know, being kind of attendant to that through many years. So I admire your work in that respect. But what I mean for this conversation is that, you know, I can trust that your politics are substantial. You know what I mean? And you think about them. So, like, what constitutes, and I'm sure you find this to be the case for you as well, what constitutes a lot of that mainstream yes campaign kind of leaves me cold or confused or just feeling like I haven't, there's a whole bunch of questions it doesn't answer. But I acknowledge that that's not messaging that's probably meant for me. I think it's intended for a bulk audience of, you know, middle of the road, normie white Australians or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I can assume that because that's the bulk of the constituency, you know.
Well, I think that's really, really important. I guess that's I've been working, you know, with Millie Telford and Larissa Baldwin around passing the message stick and the message research. And part of it was like the Yes 23 campaign doesn't represent like blackfellas, and it doesn't like it and our voices, and like, no pun not intended or anything, but or the way that we talk about ourselves. And I think that it's been, I don't know. That's why I guess, like, I don't like their messaging. It's like about blackfellas needing to be saved. So they've campaigned to a conservative audience. Reading Sally Rugg's book, How Powerful We Are, and think the way that they campaigned was that they campaigned at the base, which was LGBT people, and then like relied on LGBT people and their allies to like spread the message. And it was based off like what it meant, like, you know, messages that, you know, represented LGBT people. And I think with this campaign, they have targeted at conservatives to change conservatives' minds rather than targeting it at the base, which is blackfellas and people in the middle. And I guess that's why it's, you know, we're in this position as well, where blackfellas are angry about how the campaign's even been rolled out. Like, I'm also angry, like I'm pissed off about it.
A comrade of mine showed me now I forget the substance of the campaign, but it was something to do with the welfare or livelihood of Maori people, and this is in Aotearoa, and there was an ad for this campaign, whatever it was again, and it was actually quite similar in its it reminded me in its ability to pull the heartstrings of that Yes 23 campaign ad of the a white Australian family over generations sitting at the telly. They're both heartstring pullers, and the fundamental difference was that the Aotearoan ad featured all Maori people, but the S23 ad featured white Aussie family watching Aboriginal people on the telly. You know what I mean? And I'm like, it kind of says it all about the differences in the campaigns or even the countries right there, you know.
To be honest, when I saw that, I said I'm going to vote no.
That was...
No, because it was just like, is it really that dire that we can't even show strength of our community and the great things that we're doing? Yeah, I don't know. It was just one of those moments.
I was saying earlier, you know, you're not a lib, and I like that about you for the purpose of this conversation, because actually, if I'm honest, you were quite literally the first person to write something that I felt sort of spoke to my brain or my experience, I guess, in a way that made me consider a yes perspective, with something that felt tangible and not just sort of vibesy kind of stuff, because it's all been very abstracted otherwise. And you were writing something, I was hoping I could ask you about it. You were writing something about, you just recently read about the theory of change and some cascading changes that had come after another divisive and arguably symbolic vote, which was the plebiscite on marriage equality. Could you go through that argument?
Yeah. So the theory of change for passing the message stick is, like, if we build a groundswell of support and win a resounding yes in the upcoming referendum, we'll see like a wave of, it'll give government a mandate to make action on transformative change. You know, I read that theory of change from like for a few months, and it just never like stuck. But then I don't know, I had this aha moment where I was like, oh, wait a second, what's happened around LGBT stuff after, and what's happened since? And I was like, cause, just seeing that in Victoria it's legal to have gender neutral bathrooms now, and like my partner got their name and their gender marker changed on their birth certificate in South Australia, and it was really easy. And I was like, how did that happen so easily? That's weird. South Australia I thought was a bit, I don't know, more conservative. And also like Victoria banning the conversion therapy for LGBT people as well. And so I just saw that all of that had happened after 2017 plebiscite. And I think that the connection I made was that it was like when the government sees that there's an appetite for a minority group, I guess, then they will like take action on things. And I guess that's what I'm running the belief under. I jokingly said that I think the government has ADHD because they will only do stuff under pressure. And I think that's part of the pressure, is that this referendum, if we do get a yes, then it means that people are paying attention to blackfellas and, our aspirations. And I think as well, like, Foley will kill me for this, but after the 67 referendum, like, we did see the radical movements, like the land rights movement and all this kind of stuff. So although like it was about including us in the census, like what happened after that was the Black Power movement. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but like, I think there is like a level in which there is an ability for change. And like when blackfellas are like, nah, like nothing's changed from that, like we need to do the work. And that's the thing too, like this isn't like the silver bullet, it's not perfect, it's like deeply problematic in so many ways. But what opportunities can we take out of it?
I admit that was this biggest sticking point, in my brain working through it, knowing that we exist in a country that has a history of exerting racist power of the highest order, like we'll defy high court rulings, we'll suspend laws, will in fact invent itself as a country with a White Australia policy, specifically around a White Australia policy, all in order to persecute and threaten and endanger Indigenous life, And you look at an advisory body and you go, how do you ever have the power to compete against that real racist power of the highest order? But you're talking about incremental change, and you're also positing a very recent example of a quite similar thing, so which makes things feel a bit more real. So, a related question, I guess. Do any examples of advisory bodies affecting real change, exist that you can talk about? Like, for example, I guess I'm referring to the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria. Like, does that offer an example of a body that's had wins up on the board, like how you'd hope the Voice would have?
That's a really good question. I haven't really thought about it. I think just seeing, blackfellas, like going through the election process, and also seeing like the truth-telling process that's happening as well with the Yorta Commission. I think that's like been incredible, and that's been part of the Assembly's work as well, to get that process started. And I also think that we have had the bail laws changed, going to be changed in Victoria, and that's been since the Assembly's been in as well, and the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service was part of changing that, and that was after the death of Veronica Nelson. And we also, April Day, it has stopped public drunkenness, the abolition of public drunkenness in Victoria, and that's also been since the Assembly has been in, and all of the work that she's done and many others. I think it has been able to, I think it has been good for blackfellas to have that representation and to be able to see ourselves in that as well. And I guess it's saving blackfellas' lives right now. And it's not I guess that's the thing. It's as an abolitionist as well, there's incremental changes that we can do, or things that we can do right now. But I think the thing for abolitionists in particular is that there is a future beyond that, and we have to keep that in mind. It's what do we have in the future, and what have we got our eyes set on?
Do you think that we could have pretended to people that this was the conversation was just continuing? You know what I mean? Just neatly segue. Do you think we could have gotten away with that?
Oh, I don't think so. But maybe.
To clarify, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, but we had the first part of our conversation recorded, so thank you so much to Tarneen for your dedication to wrapping up this conversation, despite being kicked out of a studio, running low on battery power, everything that could have gone wrong, right?
Yeah, all the things.
Setting aside the voice as a body. I hope everyone else, I will actually link it in this article because I thought it was brilliant. You wrote in a really, really good Crikey article that you just recently did that you don't care about the other part of the referendum, which is the constitutional recognition part.
Yeah.
Which particularly resonates with me, I think, personally, but I think a lot of people, just to get just to have you on the record saying it in this chat, constitutional recognition couldn't possibly pump up your notion of sovereignty, Tarneen, because that's not what sovereignty is it?
No, it's not, unfortunately. And I've really done the research looking at blackfellas' different definitions, like Aileen Warren Robinson's and Crystal McKinnon's, and they're people that studied and they did their PhDs in Aboriginal sovereignty, and it's not going to happen. We do have constitutional recognition in Victoria though, and did nothing. I don't see it as a way of justice and wanting to be seen by the Constitution as my ideal in my ideal world view. It's not it, but also I see it as a strategy. In the way that I understand why people got to that place that they wanted to constitute the voice, because of the amount of times that we've had representative bodies be abolished. And so it's to secure it, so I understand the strategy or the tactic there. It's just, it's really difficult as well because it is, we're not even, we haven't even got there yet. So it's what if this, what if that? And I guess it is talking about things, preemptively. But I think as well, even after, if it is a yes, it still means that we as blackfellas have to hold the government to account. I think what people have been talking about, like, how do we hold the government to account, like, da da da. I'm just like, how have we held governments to account previously? And we've done it by taking the streets, and we've done it by, like, organisations going and doing advocacy. Like, there is so many different ways that we can hold governments to account. Accountability, like, it looks different to everybody, right? Like, it looks like, but for me, I think that holding governments to account is by protesting and, like, doing advocacy work.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that the role of activist movements such as the Indigenous land rights movement in this country, such as student activists, anti-war movements, environmentalist movements in America, abroad, they tend to get erased. Like the role that they play, the enormous role that they play in shaping, pressuring public consciousness to shape, gets completely forgotten. And I noticed that. I noticed that from the bulk of like the sort of the you know, would-be benevolent white audience are talking about yes votes being the be-all and end-all. You know, you just said the opposite, lady. You were like, you want to talk about afterwards, you know. But I don't think most people talking about putting all their effort into yes or no right now have any concept that activists make shit happen.
Yeah, part of the reason why we even got to this place now is because of the work of young black fellas around the country that have been, like, showing up on invasion days for black deaths in custody to stop the forced closures of Aboriginal communities. Like, you know, there's been so much work that's happened from young black fellas and activists around the country in, like, the last nearly decade. And I think that's why, you know, Labor has come be like, oh, there's an appetite out there. Even though it's not like what we wanted, but like there is like this consciousness rising that has happened in the last decade. Like when we organised the Invasion Day rally in 2015, there was like 5,000 people or something like that, and that was massive. And now it's, you know, like 60 to 70,000 people more.
Part of that erasure that occurs, I think, is people think those rallies happen as a reflection of popular consciousness, whereas it's the other way around. I think that dedicated, concerted shit stirrers and activists, you know what I mean, and whether it be you know, war or you know, any other group, like people with, you know, principled activists, they get together and they make those things happen. And if they're successful, you snowball that attendance like we saw with Invasion Day rallies, and then a few years later, what have you got? You've got governments of the day trying to seize on that popular momentum to make change, whether, as you said, it's the ideal kind of change that people were actually looking for. That may not have been what you were asking for, but the will was created, the momentum was created by activists. And I wonder if people, you know, a lot of the people who think that the yes no is a make or breaker, perhaps ignoring what activists can do afterwards, you know, perhaps regardless of the outcome. You know what I mean? I can see a dedicated, you know, land rights sovereignty type movement being you know, having the fire lit under them by a no, but I can see it by a yes as well. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I think going to Indigenous people, like in Canada or the States, I've had a couple of friends there that have said, you know, during the like when Trump got in, or like before Trump got in, it was like you could talk about white supremacy and like you could talk about these things in like a complex way, but then once he got in and like been there for a couple of years, like there was just no, you couldn't talk about that because everyone was like, oh, white supremacy is Donald Trump, not like shit workplaces.
From my perspective, I've been trying to round table with a few legends and a few, you know, important people like yourself to offer up different perspectives. But I just want to clarify that there's a that I admit it can be academic to me as a settler in a way that it's not fundamentally going to be to you as an Indigenous person. And so I just wanted to ask you, you know, has this debate and this referendum been damaging to you and the people that you know?
I definitely think it has been damaging for lots of people. Um, you know, I reckon that, you know, and we are like, was it like 2 weeks out or whatever, and it's like really divisive, and you know, people calling like each other names, and I know that it's like easy to attack people that are closest to you and like in your kind of circle. Um, and I think I think part of it is that like there is like criticism, of course, that like I think is so valuable, and we need to be critical of each other and the way that we worked towards a bigger movement and a bigger future and all these kinds of things. Um, but I don't know, like I just feel like there's a way of doing it. And one thing that I loved in the lead up to this, it was the day the referendum was called. Sissy Austin and I were like, she's no, and I'm yes, and we were like crying on the phone to each other for like an hour, just talking about how much we loved each other and how important um, each other is, regardless of this referendum. And I wouldn't let this referendum get in the way of that. I'm like, the colony is not worth losing relationships over, particularly in this moment where like people are voting with their family and people are voting like for all these different reasons. Um, like we aren't just like activists in this movement, like that we are like four-dimensional, like multi-dimensional people, and like we have people, you know, like mums and dads, like families, and that we are supporting, like not just in this moment, but all the time. But when, yeah, I feel compelled as well to write yes, because when I was getting announced, my mum was on the phone crying to me about how much it meant to her and how much like she said to me that she remembers when she was in the back of the classroom and getting flogged by the teacher and seeing a prime minister talk about her, and like in this moment she was really touched, and I couldn't hold that space for her because I was so cynical, and I was just like, oh my god, if Elbow cries, I'm gonna be so pissed off, I'm gonna be so angry. And I just thought like, honey, like you need to wake up to yourself. Like this is important to my mum. If I can't hold space for my mum, then how can I hold space for other people? And how can I be like empathetic and like loving and generous in not just my family but in the movement, and that I would like want to be in and be part of. And I just think like that was definitely like an aha moment for me, that I need to like be respectful. Yeah. Because it does mean a lot to my mum.
Thank you, Tarneen. That's no, it's food for thought for here. You know, I think myself, not being Indigenous, and for many other people realising, like, you know, that I suppose that sense of historicity through, you know, mum's experience through to yours over time, and having to consider that, you're considering your own, I suppose, legacy and responsibilities to people that you know and love in that respect as well. So it's really fucking personal, and you know, that's just you. It must be for any number of Indigenous people who are in here. So yeah, fuck. Thanks for sharing that, mate. You know, actually, the related note, and as we draw to a close, you know, you said in that same Crikey article, that you said towards the end, you said the fight's not over and the work's not done, and you asked specifically, what I wanted to get at was, you asked that someone's yes vote be a commitment to. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
I think that I meant it by like not being just like, this is like people going to the polling booth, voting yes, and patting themselves on the shoulder, being like, "Oh wow, my work's done." Yeah, like that's it. Because you know it happens, And I was reading Miriam Carver, and she was talking about Derek Wilson, who killed Michael Brown, that young like teenage boy, and everyone was up in arms about, like, saying, "Oh my God, so good! Like, he's going to court, he's going to trial, all of these things," and all the activists and everyone was like putting all this work into like trying to get him convicted, and trying like, and then also like this celebratory like moment of, you know, like, oh yeah, wow, he's going to he's like in court, blah 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 blah. And she just said, like, even if he does get charged, because she wrote it before the case was finalized, but like, even if he does get charged, and even if cops are charged in America, the fight isn't over. Like, it's not just about this one time. It's about like this whole system that is like killing Black people. And like, although she said, like, even though I'm not against like like, you know, look, charging cops, I'm also not for it simultaneously. And I felt like she held this really interesting like moment for me, and like for that I also connected with, because like, it's not just about these moments, it's about, yeah, the whole system's cooked, and we can't, you know, go into this and be like, oh my God, because some people are, it's like, it's so good, and we need to remember that the system is killing our people, but what do we do about it? Because at the moment, like, we do have this referendum on our hands, and there is like this chance to have policies, like a body to implement policies for our community. And I do think it's important that people make meaning of what yes means to them. And is it a commitment to a bigger thing, rather than like wiping your hands clean of blackfellas for, you know, the next 5 decades.
I desperately want to say to as many of my white leftist and centre left comrades and peers that, you know, it's all very noble for you to have a strident take that you constantly expound about your desired outcome to the voice, and indeed, congratulations on winning the competition for being the best white at listening to Aboriginal people, because there's this sort of running competition, it feels to me sometimes, on Twitter between different camps of white leftists in Australia going, no, I listen the best. No, I look at how good I am at listening. Look at my listening to Aboriginal people. Amazing. But there comes a moment after this item of whether you want to call it gesture politics or incremental change or whatever, this very binary referendum is going to be done in a minute, and you need to be there afterwards for the very real issues that Tarneen referenced just then. A nation that does kill Black people, you know, kills them in jail cells. You can't just be there for this moment of gesture politics. I think most centre-left people want to be in this country. They want to go tick the fucking box and then fuck off, because they can't conceive of change, like we said before, unless it's, you know, activists don't really, they just think activists rallies are moments where you hold a placard and you bugger off home again. That's it, you know. Oh yeah, you got enough people, great, you win. It's not that simple, you know. And the ballot box isn't the only place where change is sought. It isn't the front where Indigenous lives will be saved. It ain't just at this ballot box. It might be what happens after, but you need to be there for that, whether you're voting yes or no, right? You know, after you've demonstrated how incredible you are at listening to people, you need to fucking be there on the street, you know, not just at the ballot box, on the street as well for Indigenous people. That's what I think. Oh, fuck, now I'm ranting. Jesus Christ.
Now I have to listen to you.
Shut up, Tom. Sorry.
You can listen to white men.
Yeah, you can listen. Tarneen, look, this has been amazing. I'm so grateful. Do you have any suggestions, mate, for where people can read more perspectives like yours on a yes vote? You know, it maybe let's say the mainstream yes campaign hasn't done it for them. You know, I said to you, your perspective really made me think. Any other suggestions on where people can go to read a bit more?
I really think that, you know, Tarneen Onus put out an article today, Indigenous X. Roxy Moore did as well. Nessa Turnbull Roberts. And another person, like another, I guess, like organisation that's doing like good stuff that actually speaks to blackfellas, that represents us. I think the Get Up Right Yes campaign is talking about, you know, like we like demand treaty and climate justice and like putting our aspirations like for the future in the messaging that they're doing, because it's important to say like we want all of these things, right? So that it's like the truth and it's honest. And I do like really love their work. I feel like it's the more like radical yes campaign.
Tarneen, you've given me a lot of food for thought. You really have, you know, like challenged some of my hesitation or my preconceptions, and I really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure that everyone watching will as well. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's all right.
So I said that these conversations would be helping me to shape and ultimately decide on the direction in which I would be voting, and I thought I'd distribute those public conversations to all my followers in the hopes it would help them do the same, knowing that a lot of us are a part of a network torn between listening to Indigenous comrades who have different takes. And I have indeed arrived at a conclusion. And what is that conclusion? Well, fuck ya. I'm not going to tell ya. I didn't set about making these videos so that I could endorse a particular position. I think if you listen to these conversations, explore all the links I've shared in the descriptions and think about what all of them said, you'll be able to come to an informed decision. What I will say is that some of the most guiding stuff for me has been, particularly at the close of my conversation with Tarneen about how activism that happens after the referendum is really more important to me than the kind of the binary of a vote, because, you know, I believe more in the power of grassroots political, you know, activist action to shape public consciousness than I do in, you know, what happens inside bureaucratic or parliamentary bodies. I really, really do. Please consider these conversations if you're like me and we're searching for something a bit more satisfying and a bit more substantial than thought-terminating cliches like stop the division and we're living in no. It certainly wasn't enough for me, and if it wasn't enough for you either, I hope you've been given a bit more food for thought here. Thank you so much to all of the people that spoke to me for this, and because they're all activists, I'll say to all of them, I'll see you at the barricades well after the referendum is done. Now, I really didn't want to shake the tin after a bunch of fucking, you know, Indigenous genius being called on to give me their perspectives. You know, it's their work, not mine, ultimately. However, if you benefited from these videos, I would say, and if, you know, if you're happy to help continue for me to be paid to have a day or two off a week to continue to be a fucking idle dilettante so I can create content like this that informs you, then, you know, I would always appreciate you chucking in a clam or two on patreon.com after you fed yourself. Thank you.